His impact not only on Sarasota is incredible, but his impact on the circus industry is what really makes me proud, and I'm sure the rest of us in our industry, because we all need a great light shown on our industry, and he certainly has done that.
He decided that he was going to do something incredible that nobody else had done, and crossing the Grand Canyon, crossing Niagara Falls was on the list. And I'll say right now, there are many, many high wire walkers out there in the world, but only one crossed the Grand Canyon and only one crossed Niagara Falls, and that was Nik Wallenda from Sarasota.
Nicholas Nik Wallenda was born Nicholas Trofer on January 24, 1979 in Sarasota, Florida, to Delilah Wallenda and Terry Trofer. He was the youngest of two children, his sister Liana, 2 years older. His mother was the granddaughter of famed performer Karl Wallenda. As a wire walker, she introduced Nik to the wire early.
My mom was 6 months pregnant with me and still walking the wire. So I've walked a wire longer than I've been alive.
From the very beginning, his parents knew Nik was going to be an energetic child.
Nik was always very active, even in the womb. I mean, he was bouncing around, and he came out very fast with the cord around his neck, so it was purple, but he never stopped ever since he was born. He was always running. He never learned to walk.
His father, Terry Trofer, discovered performing as a student at the Sailor Circus when he was 15. He wanted to pursue the possibility of a future performing and heard Karl Wallenda might have an opportunity for a young intern.
He looked in the white pages, found Karl Wallenda's phone number, called him and said, "Hey, I'm from Sailor Circus. I'd love to go out on the road and help you put up and down your equipment." And Karl said, "Great." And he hired him to come out on the road for a summer. That's where he was 17 at that point, and he met my mother, who was Karl's granddaughter.
His parents would become active performers, not only with Karl, but in their own right. As a toddler, Nik was mesmerized by their performances.
Remember always seeing my parents training in the backyard on that wire that's only a couple feet off the ground, and seeing them do that and enjoy it, have fun and playing, and always wanting to be a part of it, grabbing that wire and saying, you know, "Mom, hold my hand," and walk me back and forth across. And that's really how it all starts, is as a game.
When he was 2 years old, Nik began his performing career with his family.
We were in San Diego, California. My parents were performing at SeaWorld there, and it was a performance, a show. And they had everything from clowns to acrobats to jugglers to my family performing on the wire. And the clowns decided they were going to dress me up, and I was going to come out in a pillowcase of all things, and they were going to carry me out and dump me in the middle of the ring. And that was my first experience in front of a crowd, not on a wire, but just performing in general.
Nik was hooked by the exhilaration of performing, but even then, he wanted to get on the wire.
From there, I started learning the wire. By the age of 4, I was walking the wire on my own.
He wanted to learn, and we would just hold his arms, and he would pretend that he was a wire walker walking across the wire. And pretty soon he got it on his own and just started doing it himself. We would actually have to slow him down to teach him how to do it properly, because time was of the essence for Nik. He just had to keep moving, keep going, keep learning.
Faith was an important part of the family's life. They attended the Tabernacle Christian Church in Sarasota. It was here that Nik would experience a spiritual awakening which would shape his life and passion.
My mom recently pulled out my commitment card where I gave my life to Christ and accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior when I believe I was 4 years old at that point.
Nik attended elementary school at the Tabernacle Christian School, which provided him with the opportunity to continue to travel and perform with his parents.
I started going to school actually when I was 3 years old. So I went to K4, it was called at that point, when I was 3, and had gone there all the way through middle school. I, of course, went out with my parents while they performed, but the great thing about this private school was the fact that they would allow me to come and go as I needed to. As my parents would go out on the road, I could go, and they would send the curriculum with me. We would ship it back to them as I would finish the week's work. My parents would give me my spelling tests, and they were sort of my teachers while we were on the road. But then when we came back home, I would go right back into school and kind of blend back in with the rest of the students.
Growing up, Nik was fully aware of the dangers that existed in the family business. His great-grandfather, Karl Wallenda, was a renowned and innovative high-wire artist. In 1962, the Wallendas were performing the 7-person chair act at the Shrine Circus at Detroit's State Fair Coliseum. The front man on the wire faltered and the pyramid collapsed. 3 men fell to the ground, killing 2 and leaving 1 paralyzed from the waist down. 16 years later, on March 22, 1978, during a promotional walk between the towers of Condado Plaza Hotel, 100 feet high in San Juan, Puerto Rico, Karl Wallenda fell from the wire and died. He was 73. That was a year before Nik was born, but he would learn of his great-grandfather at a young age and be inspired to follow in his footsteps.
He was an innovator, he was creative, and he really, from what I've been told, held the family together. And you can see it generations after he's passed away. We still look to him.
At school, Nik was a good student. Still, he continued to be motivated to perform and focused on his training. He went from clowning to juggling.
It was about 11 or 12 where I said, I really want to do this. I want to start performing up high. And that's where I really started focusing on training and practicing. It would be out there 3, 4, 5 hours a day. Even when my parents weren't out there, I'd be out there practicing because I wanted to get up on that wire.
He soon was performing on the wire with his sister, Liana.
By the age of 13, I had performed in my first professional high wire performance. I was about 25 feet above the ground in upstate New York, where I got on the wire with my family and performed a series of tricks, from a salute to riding a bicycle to walking up one end of the wire without a balancing pole.
While he continued to travel with his family when they had bookings, he took a job at a local breakfast and lunch restaurant at 5 Points in Sarasota called First Watch to fill in during the downtimes.
Started as a busboy, and the great thing was that they would allow me to come and go. I worked hard, I busted my butt, I proved myself, to the point where they said, sure, you need to leave for 2 weeks, go ahead. You need to leave for a month, 3 months, go ahead. You always have your job when you come back.
Nik was homeschooled for high school and continued to travel with his family. However, when he graduated high school in 1997, his parents encouraged him to seek opportunities beyond performing. Nik was prepared to study to become a doctor.
Applied at Southeastern University, which is a Bible college in Lakeland. I got accepted there. I planned on going there, but the story kind of changed direction as I got a phone call from my Uncle Tino and invited to go back to Detroit, Michigan to perform the 7-person pyramid for the first time in that arena since it fell back in 1962.
The recreation of the 7-person pyramid was instrumental not only to Nik, but his entire family.
There were so many times growing up where we would be performing somewhere and people would come up to us and say, to my parents, and say, I didn't know you guys were performing after the fall. I thought you guys stopped.
When his Uncle Tino, his mother's brother, called him to participate, he was elated to be part of this history-making event.
When that phone call came in, I was like, you know what, I'll skip the first semester and I'm gonna go perform. I'm gonna train with my family and we're gonna go do this thing and show the world that the Wallendas don't ever give up, that we're still going strong.
The recreation of the pyramid was a family undertaking. The bottom row consisted of Nik's father, Terry Trofer, first, and then Nik, his uncle, Sasha Pavlata, and his uncle Tino. The second level consisted of a brother-in-law, Tony Hernandez, Tino's oldest daughter, Alita, and Nik's mother, Delilah, on top. Joining them in Detroit was Karl's daughter, Jenny Wallenda, Delilah, and Tino's mother and Nik's grandmother, who, as a young girl, had performed on the wire with the Wallendas, seated in the top chair.
My children will show you, they will finish what we started to do the last time we were in Detroit.
On March 6, 1998, the troupe successfully recreated the 7-person pyramid in its original form with a chair on a high wire without nets or safety gear at the State Fair Coliseum in Detroit, the same venue where 2 of their family members fell to their deaths performing the stunt in 1962.
It was emotional. There were a lot of different thoughts that go in your mind. What a tragedy it was to the family, but what a wonderful thing to show that the family continues on. Something my grandfather always said, again, we never give up. We continue on, even through tragedy.
It was a dream come true. I remember that first performance, and it was like time had stopped, and the arena, you could hear a pin drop. And to make it across, I get goosebumps just re-envisioning that time of making it to the other side, that first performance, and the audience erupting.
The press covered every detail, and soon Nik found himself interviewed by national television programs. He realized the world had not forgotten the Wallendas or their fellow performers.
Nik looked outside, and down the entire length of the road were satellite trucks lined up, and none of us could take a turn to the right or left without a microphone and a camera in our face. And it really, it was Nik's, I guess it's his aha moment, that he saw that there was interest in our type of work.
That point was where I said, you know what, I'm not going to go to college. And I think my parents were fairly upset about that. You know, they really had thought, you know, our son's going to go a different direction. This is great, and this is where he needs to go. But I really felt like this was I truly felt like it was a desire that God placed in my heart, and that I needed to continue to carry on this legacy.
He continued to travel with his family, performing the seven at various venues. In his personal life, he was falling in love with a girl he had known most of his life.
To be honest, I always thought she was out of my league. She's absolutely gorgeous. The first time we went out, we just went out to a restaurant. I took her to a restaurant, and she got a water, and that was it. Didn't eat, and I thought, what in the world's going on here?
I was so nervous. He wasn't. He was like eating away, and he was like, "You sure you don't want anything to eat?" And I was like, "No, I'll just take a coffee." Like, I was embarrassed that I'd get something on me.
We just became closer and closer, and I knew that she was the one for me. We had the same dreams, the same passions. She loved performing, I loved performing.
In December of 1999, after performing the Seven in Montreal, Canada, Nik proposed.
The seven-person pyramid finished, the audience erupted, the whole family came down, and I stayed on the platform. And she started freaking out because why would I stay up there? Something's wrong.
His uncle was in the show, and he is a clown, so he came and he found me in the audience and picked me up and brought me to the center ring, and I was like, I still had no idea. I was like, what the heck is going on?
And I walked out to the middle of the wire, and I knelt down, and I proposed to her in front of about 30,000 people at the Molson Center in Canada.
And he had like this banner pulled up to the center of the wire, and it said, he ended up, "Will you marry me?" And I was in shock. I was just like standing there, and he came down and he was running towards me, and my mother-in-law, she like tapped the back of my shoulder. She's like, "Wallenda, you have to say yes now." And I was like, oh yes.
They were married a few days later in Sarasota on January 3rd, 2000.
We didn't have any money to pay for a wedding. My parents couldn't afford a wedding. Her parents couldn't afford a wedding. So we were just going to the courthouse. We went to the Sarasota County Courthouse. January 3rd, my parents came with us. We all dressed up. We got married.
I didn't even own a dress at that point. I was very much a girl with like jeans and a t-shirt on. So I had to borrow my mother-in-law's. I was like, "You have a dress that I can wear?"
An accomplished circus performer in her own right, Arindira would become a part of the troupe, going on the road with Nik and his family.
She began on the platform and sitting on my shoulders, that sort of thing, as I walked the wire, and then eventually started learning the wire. Of course, she performed most of her life, and so because of that, it was natural for her to become, to be part of the act.
The couple also began a family of their own, beginning with the birth of their oldest son, Yanni, on January 25th, 1998. Followed by son Ambrose, born on April 19, 2001, and daughter Evita, February 24th, 2003.
What an amazing gift that God gives us to be parents. What a challenging gift it is as well. We have three beautiful children, one that's about to turn 18, which is surreal to me that they grow up that quick. But they're exciting. It's awesome to have kids. It's an amazing opportunity to be able to invest what your parents have taught you and put that, hopefully, instill that into your children.
He's the best father. He's like always outside, playing with the kids, football. I always call him Peter Pan. He never grows up. He's always out there. He's very good, and he's not always playful. He also makes the boys go out there and work with him and teaches them how to work on cars, just so that they're prepared for everything in life.
As Nik continued to strive to reach new heights, he worked his way up to general manager of First Watch during the down times. In 2000, while at work at First Watch, he received a call from an agent in Japan.
And he wanted us to come over there and perform the seven-person pyramid, but he wanted us to also break a record. And I knew it was my opportunity right then. So I said, well, what if we do the 8-person pyramid? And I was young and ambitious, and I'm still ambitious, not as young, but I still feel young. And I said, right then on the spot, why don't we do the 4-layer 8-person pyramid? And he loved that idea.
In 2001, Nik, along with his troupe, received his first Guinness World Record by creating the first ever 8-person high-wire pyramid at Japan's Kirishiki Tivoli Park.
I remember thinking at that point, I was young and a little bit naive, this is gonna be it. We're gonna be set now, and coming back and going back to the restaurant for another year. It wasn't like it just happened and everything. There were many, many setbacks.
Through the setbacks, Nik continued to support his family working in Sarasota. After First Watch, he went to work with his father, an engineer as well as a performer at Van Wezel Performing Arts Hall.
My dad was actually the head carpenter there for many years. Then he became the interim technical director for about 2 years. And while he was there working for the IATSE union, IATSE, theatrical and staging, he's like, hey, this is a great job, it's great money, you should come in here. And I ended up starting to work, loading shows in and out, eventually became the assistant head carpenter there for a little while. Again, in between gigs, trying to find the next gig to pay our bills.
From 2002 to 2005, he performed with his family at various venues, forming his own troupe in 2005. During 2007 and 2008, he joined his longtime friend Bello Knock in the Ringling Brothers Circus, creating a double version of the Wheel of Steel. On October 15, 2008, Nik set the Guinness World Record for the longest and highest bicycle ride on a high wire, 250 foot long and 135 feet above the ground in New Jersey. The feat was broadcast live on The Today Show with hosts Matt Lauer and Meredith Vieira. The press proclaimed him the King of the High Wire. He and his agents decided this was a title they should embrace.
We started capitalizing on that. Okay, if they're going to call him the King of the High Wire, well, let's build a brand off of that. Let's use that. That's a great title.
Over the next several years, he continued to build his brand, setting numerous world records, including a feat hanging by his teeth, suspended 250 feet above the earth from a helicopter. But for Nik, one of the most personal and inspirational was the recreation of his grandfather Karl's last walk.
I always wanted to honor him by going and recreating that. So I decided that I would seek permission and see if we could pull it off. And what kind of hotel, it's owned by the same company that it was back then, is going to say, yes, there's been a serious accident, we're not going to let you do it again, but they did.
On June 4th, 2011, Nik completed a 100-foot-long high-wire crossing between the two towers of the 10-story Condado Plaza Hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico. His mother, Delilah, would join him that day on the wire.
I knelt down on the wire and blew a kiss up, and it was just like, I don't know, I remember there being tears as I'm walking the wire, just tears in my eyes, and to honor somebody that's been so influential in your life, there's nothing, not a greater feeling than that. And then to be able to do it alongside of my mother, where she sat on that wire and I stepped over her, and then she got up and we walked into opposite ends. It was a dream come true. It was something that I felt like I needed to do. I felt like it closed a chapter in our family's history, and for my immediate family, for me, my mom, my dad, I think it did.
The successful recreation of that walk would ultimately lead to Nik's biggest challenge yet, crossing Niagara Falls.
I always wanted to do Niagara, but I knew that there was a law in the United States that was over 100 years old that said no stunting Niagara Falls, a very similar ordinance in Canada that said the same thing. And I knew of other wire walkers that had tried and then were currently trying at the time to get permission to do it, and that weren't having any luck.
A lot of people can talk about doing something, but not many can actually achieve the goal. And what Nik had to go through was change laws about walking across Niagara Falls, having two governments, two countries actually, come together and agree on the walk across Niagara Falls. He did it.
It took long hours and nearly 2 years of negotiating to convince both the U.S. and Canadian officials to permit the feat. With approval, additional hurdles needed to be overcome. Rigging, engineering, crowd control, all would cost money.
We spent $150,000 just on security I didn't have $150,000 back then. People don't realize the dynamics of the rigging. These riggings are just enormous. Niagara Falls was $1 million to rig. There's a lot that goes into it. And that's not money thrown away. I'm extremely frugal. It's just what it takes to do these massive walks. So how am I going to get that funded? How am I going to pay for that? And I didn't have a TV network at that time. I didn't have a partner. So eventually, ABC threw a tweet. I literally got a tweet from ABC from a producer at Good Morning America, Morgan Zalkin, and she said, "Hey Nick, I'm a producer, senior producer at Good Morning America, and we'd love to have you on." And from there, it turned into a meeting with the vice president of entertainment to signing a contract with ABC to walk across Niagara Falls.
ABC agreed and then threatened to cancel after concern over Nick's safety. The only way they would continue was to require Nick to wear a tether.
It was heartbreaking, to say the least. You know, if there's one thing that I could change about that walk, it was the tether. If there's one thing I was scared about, nervous about, was that tether. I'd never worn a tether in my life.
It was now set. On June 15, 2012, Nick would be the first person ever to walk on a wire across Niagara Falls. It was an awe-inspiring experience.
No one had ever walked over Niagara Falls. They all walked over the river downstream, almost a kilometer downstream. No one walked over the precipice of Niagara Falls until I walked. So to be in that position and to walk literally over that edge and look straight down as those falls were going was just, it was a surreal moment in life. And something that is almost hard to describe, hard to put into words. But what an amazing feeling to be able to complete that walk and to be able to say I'm the first person in the world that walked directly over Niagara Falls is pretty wild.
When Nick was stepped out on the wire and it crossed over the edge of the falls where the bottom was 185 feet below him, there were a lot of unknowns. We didn't know what the wind was going to do at that point because it swirled so much in that area. So I was kind of holding my breath when he took those first couple of steps out, but once I saw that you know, he was moving along just fine, I felt much better.
As I was walking, as I always do, I'm talking to God. If I'm not talking to my Father here on earth, I'm talking to Jesus, my Lord and Savior, and God. I'm simply living my life in the open. I'm not ashamed of the gospel. I'm not ashamed of who I am. And when I walk that wire, I find that peace that He promises in His Word that passes all understanding. And as I'm on that wire, I proclaim that.
After the successful walk across Niagara Falls, Nick set his sights on the Grand Canyon. On June 23, 2013, he walked across the Little Colorado River Gorge in Navajo Territory outside Grand Canyon National Park's borders, about 40 miles east of the main tourist facilities. The event, billed as a Grand Canyon crossing and titled Skywire Live with Nik Wallenda, aired live worldwide on the Discovery Channel with a 10-second delay in case there was trouble.
He was willing to put in that work that no one else sees. You know, all the permissions that it takes to make a walk like that happen.
His next amazing feat was to walk between two skyscrapers in Chicago, Illinois. On November 2, 2014, Discovery aired the special titled Skyscraper Live. In the special, Nick completed 2 tightrope walks, setting 2 new Guinness World Records. One for walking the steepest tightrope incline between 2 buildings, and the other for the highest tightrope walk while blindfolded. While Nick is the focal point of the act as he walks the wire, he depends upon his team of nearly 18 trusted professionals to assure his safety. Every detail is meticulously cared for during one of Nick's walks, even down to the shoes on his feet, custom made by his mother, Delilah. His father is present during each walk to talk him through and provide a calming voice.
As he talks to me, often he's talking me off the cliff, if you will, as I'm on that wire, if that makes any sense.
Long before Nick takes to the wire, his father and uncle, Michael Trofer, a former Pentagon-based naval engineer, inspect every aspect of the rigging.
Their job is to do nothing, to not touch a thing, but just to walk around and inspect. That's all they have to do. We've got layers. When I do my TV specials, we've got 3 layers of engineering that oversee each other. There's a lot of peace knowing, okay, my dad was here, he checked it out, everything's gonna be fine.
Today, Nick continues to look for the next big opportunity and travels performing with his family.
My dream is to continue to inspire people. Really, that's what it's about. Inspire people that nothing's impossible. That if you work hard enough, if you set your mind to it, no matter how impossible it might seem, it's possible.
While Nik Wallenda has built a reputation internationally, he has also remained true to Sarasota and serves as an ambassador for the city wherever he goes.
I love Sarasota. I promote Sarasota all over the world, no matter where I am. One question I get from media all the time is, what's your favorite place in the world to vacation? And it's Sarasota. This is my vacation when I'm home. I travel a lot, so to me, being home in Sarasota, this is paradise.
He has performed several feats locally to help promote the city and organizations. In February of 2010, he walked across Sarasota's bayfront between One Watergate condominium and Sarasota's Ritz-Carlton Hotel. It was broadcast over national television.
The images that were shown with Nik walking across Gulfstream Avenue and 41 on the bayfront were, cast around the world, and it was just a wonderful opportunity for this beautiful skyline of the city on the bayfront to be seen by millions of people.
Nik is an avid supporter of Circus Sarasota and specifically trains at Benderson Park in Sarasota to promote the beauty of the city.
Nathan Benderson Park has hosted his practice, hosted it 2 years in a row. And he was very cognizant of, okay, I want reporters to shoot it from this angle. I want them to see this beautiful lake. I want them to see the beautiful skies in Sarasota when this goes on the news.
Nik Wallenda is a draw, and whenever we have him in our show, our seats are full. That's a given because people know him around the world, and he doesn't have to be over Niagara Falls or the Grand Canyon to make an impact.
On January 3, 2015, to celebrate their 15-year wedding anniversary, Nik and Arundira renewed their vows on national television. The ceremony was performed by Pastor Joel Osteen.
We did it at the Katazan, which is the house of John Ringling right on the bay, which is very, very nostalgic to both of our families. John Ringling brought my great-grandfather over as well as her family, and there were about 250 people there. We had 3 kids, they were all in the wedding. And it was just loose and fun and exciting. We actually came in and we found the smallest car that we could, and me and 8 groomsmen and a driver all came in that car. It was just a great time to where we could actually celebrate and she could have her special day.
Above all that Nik has accomplished, he places his faith in God and love of family first.
We have an agreement that I won't leave home for more than 6 days unless they're with me.
We ask Nik Wallenda his advice for those who follow.
I think it's as simple as putting God first. I think it's that simple as living a successful life. But also in the worldly sense, it really is about working hard, focusing on your dreams, and not giving up.